Hey everyone, before we begin, quick warning. What you're about to hear is not a campfire story. It isn't a creepypasta stitched together from other people's nightmares. It's a confession I've tried to bury under better habits, cleaner jobs, and quieter nights. If you're listening with the lights off, you may want to reconsider. If you're driving, keep your eyes on the road. And if you're alone, just know I was alone too, at least in the way that matters. Now, welcome back to Whispers in the Dark. If you're new here, I'm glad you found your way in. If you're returning, you already know the kind of doors we open together. Make yourself comfortable, settle in, and let's step carefully. Some places don't like to be disturbed. This happened 3 years ago, in late October, when the trees were shedding their last brittle leaves, and every street smelled faintly of wet bark and chimney smoke. The days shortened like someone was trimming them with scissors. Twilight would spill into evening too fast, and the sky would turn the color of bruised metal long before dinner. I wasn't always the type to believe in demons. I'm still not sure I believe in the way people mean it, neat and certain, like a pinned butterfly. But I know what happened. I know what I heard. I know what climbed into a woman's body and wore her voice the way a child wears a mask, too big, slipping, revealing the teeth underneath. Back then, my name was attached to a little business with a big promise: deliverance. We called ourselves a ministry because it sounded clean. Morrow and Pike Spiritual Services. We had a website with tasteful black and white photos of candlelight and open Bibles. We listed testimonials from people who didn't exist, and we spoke on the phone in warm, careful tones, like counselors, like men who would never hurt you. We offered exorcisms for a suggested donation, which was a clever way of saying a fixed price without making it sound like a transaction. We were fake, not in the way some people are fake, smiling while they hate you. We were fake in the simplest, ugliest way. We took money from desperate families and gave them theater. It started, as these things do, as a joke that got traction. I'd met Declan Pike at a rundown gym in South London, where the air always smelled of disinfectant trying to hide sweat. Declan had the kind of face that looked honest even when he wasn't. Broad forehead, clear eyes, a smile that made older women soften and younger men relax. He used to sell luxury watches with certificates that could fool an appraiser for 10 minutes. He'd also once convinced a landlord that he was an accountant from Dublin, just to rent a flat he couldn't afford. He was charming in the way a lockpick is charming. Useful, dangerous, smooth. I was the quieter half. I'd studied a little theology at a local college before dropping out. Not because I lacked faith, but because I lacked money. I'd always been the one people called when they had questions they didn't want to ask out loud. I read widely saints and skeptics, ritual and psychology. I had a voice that sounded calm even when my hands weren't. Declan said the idea came from a viral video some American deliverance pastor yelling at a teenager while the crowd screamed Amen. He showed it to me on his phone in the gym lobby, both of us still breathing hard from the treadmill. "They pay for that," he said, eyes bright. "They pay thousands." I laughed because it was ridiculous. Then I stopped laughing because it was. The first time we did it, it was for a man who claimed his daughter had night terrors and fits. The GP had mentioned anxiety and epilepsy. The father wanted a demon. He wanted a villain he could cast out. He wanted a ritual that made him feel like he'd fought for her. Declan wore a cheap collar and a second-hand cassock. I brought a Bible and a little bottle of water I'd labeled holy with a black marker. We laid hands on the girl and spoke Latin-eyed copied from Wikipedia. Declan shouted at the spirit to leave. The girl cried. The mother sobbed into her hands. The father pressed a thick envelope into Declan's palm at the end and thanked us like we'd pulled their child back from the cliff. When we left, Declan laughed all the way down the stairs. I didn't. My stomach felt hollow, like I'd swallowed cold air. We told ourselves we were doing something useful. We weren't doctors, but we offered comfort. We made people feel seen. We gave them a story where they weren't helpless. That's the lie that kept me fed. We got better at it. We built a kit, vials of blessed olive oil with a drop of peppermint, rosary beads, candles, a portable speaker for Gregorian chants. Declan perfected his performance. His voice could fill a room and make people flinch. I learned to watch families like an audience, to anticipate when they needed a pause, a touch, a reassuring scripture. We never physically hurt anyone. We never restrained anyone. We never, God help me, expected anything truly unexplainable. We worked mostly in homes, because homes are intimate and private, and people are more willing to believe strange things in their own kitchens at night. We asked to dim the lights. We'd let shadows do half the work. We'd request silence. We'd create a little stage out of someone's lounge, a candlelit circle of dread. And it worked too well. Calls came from Brighton, Croydon, Romford, sometimes farther. We were polite on the phone. We asked questions. We sounded concerned. We sounded like authorities on the unseen. We didn't advertise on social media. We didn't need to. Word of mouth spreads fastest when it's soaked in fear. Then one damp Thursday evening, the voicemail arrived. The first thing I noticed wasn't the words. It was the pause before them. A long, quivering silence, like someone had pressed their mouth against the receiver and forgotten how to speak. Then a woman's voice, thin and careful. "My sister," she said, "please. I don't know who else to call. She isn't herself. We've tried doctors. We've tried priests. They won't come back. They say it's mental illness, and they can't. They can't do anything." A shallow inhale, as if the air hurt. "She's in the old house. In Martin, please. We'll pay whatever you ask." The last sentence came out too fast, desperate. And behind it, so faint I nearly missed it, there was another sound. A soft scrape, like nails drawn lightly over wood. Declan listened, with his arms folded, jaw working. "Martin where?" he asked when it ended. Near Whitby, I said, because I'd been once years ago. Sea air and black cliffs. A place where fog liked to settle. Declan raised his eyebrows. That's a drive. It's also money, he added, as if that closed the matter. We called back the next morning. Her name was Elspeth Rook. Her sister was named Marion. Elspeth lived nearby in a cottage down the lane. Marion lived in their family house, a big, old place at the end of a crumbling drive, shut up most of the year. Their parents had died, and Marion had moved in alone. At first, Elspeth said, it was grief. Then it became something else. She talks to someone, Elspeth whispered, as if afraid the phone would carry the sound back. At night, she stands in the hall and talks like there's a person there. But there's no one. Sometimes she laughs, but it doesn't sound like her. It sounds like she's copying what laughter is. Declan gave me a look that said, perfect. The kind of story that sells itself. She hurt anyone? I asked. She hasn't hurt anyone, Elspeth said. Not yet. But she watches. She watches like she's waiting for a sign. We agreed on a fee that made Declan's eyes gleam. Elspeth didn't haggle. She sounded relieved, even grateful, like paying was a kind of penance. We packed the kit and left London that afternoon. Declan drove. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the city dissolve into motorway into fields. The sky hung low and colorless. The kind of day where the sun feels like it's behind frosted glass. As we neared the coast, the air changed. It got colder, sharper. Fog began to gather in the dips of the land. The radio crackled with static, the station fatting in and out as if something didn't want music to survive out there. Declan tapped the steering wheel. We do the usual, he said. Give them a show. Make it dramatic. Get paid, leave. I said, don't get all moral on me, he added, glancing over. They want it. That was the thing. They always wanted it. People don't call us because they want the truth. They call because they want an answer shaped like a monster they can name. Martin was smaller than I remembered. A handful of houses crouched behind hedges. The road narrowed and buckled. The sea smell drifted inland, salted and metallic. When we turned off onto a lane, the hedgerows rose high on either side, bare branches knitting overhead like ribs. Elspeth met us at the edge of the drive, standing by a low stone wall. She was in her early 30s, wrapped in a thick coat, hair pulled back. Her face had the drained look of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. Her eyes kept flicking toward the trees. You came, she said, and her voice shook with something that wasn't quite relief. Thank you. Declan stepped out, smoothing his cassock. Of course, we're here to help. Elspeth led us up the drive. The house appeared through the fog like a memory. Tall, gabled, dark stone, windows blank and watching. Ivy crawled over one side like a slow infection. The front door was swollen with damp and flaked paint. The whole place seemed to lean inward, as if listening to its own secrets. "You live here?" Declan asked. "No," Elspeth said quickly. "I know I can't. I'm down the lane." Marion insisted on staying. She says it's where she belongs. A crow called somewhere above us. It sounded wrong, too hoarse, too human. Elspeth's hands tightened around the strap of her bag. "She's inside. She knows you're coming." "How?" I asked, before I could stop myself. Elspeth looked at me, eyes shining. She said so. This morning she stood in the kitchen and said, "They are coming." And then she smiled like it was funny. Declan nodded, still confident. "All right, we'll speak to her." Elspeth hesitated at the door, as if crossing the threshold might change the air in her lungs. Then she pushed it open. The smell hit me first. Not rot, not something simple. It was the smell of a house sealed too long, damp plaster, old smoke, cold stone. And beneath it, faintly, a sweet, sickly note like spoiled fruit. The hallway was narrow and high-ceilinged. Wallpaper peeled in long strips, exposing older layers beneath patterns of flowers and lines like veins. The floorboards were dark and warped. At the far end, a staircase rose into shadow. It was quiet in a way that didn't feel peaceful. Quiet like the pause before a sneeze. Quiet like the moment you realize someone has stopped breathing. "Elspeth," a voice called from somewhere deeper in the house. It was light, almost cheerful. "Is that you?" Elspeth flinched. "Yes," she called back. I brought someone. They're here to help." A soft laugh drifted down the corridor. "Help," the voice echoed, tasting the word. Elspeth led us into the sitting room. The curtains were drawn, though it was only late afternoon. The room was lit by a single lamp that gave off a weak yellow glow. Dust lay on every surface like a second skin. Family photos lined the mantel, faces smiling in frozen moments, but all the frames had been turned inward, facing the wall. In the center of the room sat Marion. She was thinner than her photo on Elspeth's phone. Her hair hung loose, dark and tangled, and her skin had a pallor that made her lips look too red. She wore a nightgown under a cardigan, though the house was cold. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers laced, perfectly still. Her eyes lifted to us. I expected wildness. I expected someone twitching, muttering. Instead, her gaze was calm, almost polite. "Hello," she said. Declan smiled, stepping forward. "Marion, I'm Declan Pike. This is my associate. We're here because your sister is worried about you." Marion tilted her head, a slow, curious motion. "Worried," she repeated, as if tasting it. "Elspeth worries. It keeps her warm." Elspeth swallowed. "Marion, please, just talk to them." Marion's eyes slid to Elspeth. For a moment, something flickered there, an old familiarity, a sister's impatience. Then it vanished, replaced by a look that made my skin prickle. Interest without warmth. "You brought strangers into our house," Marion said softly. "You always always did like to show people things. It's not, Elspeth began. Declan cleared his throat, the performance starting. Marion, we don't mean to upset you. We're simply going to ask a few questions and say a few prayers. If there's anything troubling you, we want to help you find peace. Marion's mouth curved into a small smile. Peace, she said. That's a lovely word. People throw it around like bread. She looked at me then, directly. Her pupils seemed too large, as if the lamp was failing to reach them. And you, she said, you're the one who reads. My stomach tightened. Pardon. You read, she repeated. You keep things in your head. You don't like the noise he makes. Her eyes flicked to Declan. But you like the quiet after. Declan chuckled, uneasy. All right, let's not play games. Marion's smile widened by a fraction. Games, she agreed. Yes. Elspeth wrung her hands. Please, she whispered to me, not to Declan. Just do what you do. And so we did. Because that was the only thing we knew how to do. We set the scene with familiar motions. Declan asked Elspeth to bring a chair and place it in the center of the room. He asked Marion to sit. Marion stood without resistance, moving smoothly, almost gracefully, and sat down. Declan placed a candle on the coffee table and lit it. The flame wavered, then steadied, casting long shadows on the walls. I opened my Bible to a marked passage, the one I always used because it sounded authoritative even when I wasn't sure I believed the words. Declan began with gentle questions, then built toward accusation. Marion, he said, voice deepening, do you renounce any spirit that may be afflicting you? Do you reject the lies and the darkness? Marion watched him like someone watches a street performer, amused but not impressed. I reject bad manners, she said, and damp. This house is full of damp. Declan pressed on, raising the intensity. If there is any unclean spirit within you, I command it to reveal itself. In the name of, he sprinkled holy water onto Marion's forehead. The droplets slid down her skin like sweat. Marion blinked once. Then she laughed. It was a small laugh at first, like a giggle caught in the throat. But it grew, expanding, filling the room, echoing strangely off the high ceiling. It wasn't hysterical, it was delighted, like she'd heard a joke she'd been waiting years to hear. Elspeth covered her mouth, eyes wide. Declan's jaw tightened. He leaned closer, voice turning harsh. Spirit, I command you. Marion's laughter stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was so sharp, it felt like pressure in my ears. Marion lifted her gaze, and her voice dropped into a register that didn't fit her throat. You don't command, she said. It wasn't a gravelly movie voice. It wasn't theatrical. It was calm, measured, like someone speaking from behind a thick door. The words came out with the shape of Marion's mouth, but they didn't sound like her. Declan faltered, just for a second. Then he pushed forward, stubborn. In the name of Jesus Christ, You do not know the name, Marion interrupted. You sell it. You smear it on oil and water and call it clean. My hands went cold. I looked at Declan. He looked back, and for the first time since I'd met him, his eyes held something like fear. Elspeth whispered, "Marion." Marion's head turned slowly toward Elspeth, the movement too precise. "She brought you," Marion said, still in that wrong voice. She opened the door. Elspeth trembled. "Please," she said. "Please, Marion, come back." Marion's lips parted in a smile that showed teeth, but not in a friendly way. "I am back," she said. "I'm right here." The candle flame shivered. Not flickered, shivered, as if a cold breath had passed over it. Declan tried to recover. He raised his Bible like a shield. "We're going to continue," he said, voice tight. "We're going to pray, and you're going to be free." Marion's eyes slid to him, and something in them seemed to focus, like a lens tightening. "You're wearing cloth," she said. "You think it makes you holy." Declan's cheeks flushed. "Spirit, you have no power here." Marion leaned forward slightly, still strapped to nothing, still unrestrained, and yet the air in the room seemed to thicken, like humidity before a storm. "I have power where I am invited," she said, "where grief makes a hollow, where guilt makes a door." The lamp dimmed, just for a moment, and when it brightened again, the shadows in the corners seemed deeper. I told myself it was old wiring. I told myself it was coincidence. But my body didn't believe my mind. My heart was beating too hard. My throat felt too small. Declan began to shout. He had a script in his head: pressure, provocation, climax. He wanted Marion to thrash, to scream, to give Elspeth the performance she'd paid for. And in some twisted way, he was trying to force the thing in her to follow our usual rules. "Come out," he roared, "in the name of..." Marion's eyes snapped to me again. "And you," she said, softly now, almost tender, "you're the one who still wonders if your mother heard you pray." My breath caught. I hadn't told Declan. I hadn't told anyone here. My mother had died when I was 20. I'd sat in a hospital corridor with a vending machine humming and whispered prayers I didn't know if I meant. I hadn't spoken that memory out loud in years. Declan's shouting faltered. I felt Elspeth's gaze on me, confusion and fear mixing. Marion smiled at my silence. "Little girl," she murmured, still talking to ceilings. The candle flame bent sideways, like it was being pulled by an invisible hand. Declan stepped back, swallowing. "All right," he said, voice lower, more cautious. "All right. Let's take a moment." Marion's smile didn't fade. "You came for money," she said, "but you found something else." Declan's face tightened. "This is a mental health episode," he said abruptly, as if saying it could make it true. "Elspeth, you should." Marion laughed again, a quick sound. "No," she said. "Don't run to their soft words. Don't hide behind their diagnoses. This is not a sickness that pills can water down." She tilted her head, listening to something we couldn't hear. "Do you hear it?" she asked, and her voice shifted, becoming almost normal again. The house. Elspeth whispered, "What do you mean?" Marian's eyes drifted upward, toward the ceiling, toward the dark stairwell. "It remembers," she said. "It remembers the scratching. It remembers the prayers that didn't work. It remembers the mouth that spoke in the wall." My stomach turned. Declan tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "All right," he said. "Enough, we're leaving." Elspeth grabbed his sleeve. "No," she pleaded. "Please, you can't, she's." Declan shook her off, irritation flaring to cover fear. "This is beyond us," he snapped. This is. Marian's gaze snapped to him again. "Beyond you," she finished gently. "Yes." Then the room changed. It wasn't like a jump scare. It wasn't a loud bang. It was subtler, worse. The temperature dropped, quickly, like someone had opened a freezer door. My breath came out white in front of my face, faint but visible. The candle flame shrank, struggling, and the air smelled suddenly stronger of that sweet rot, like fruit left too long in a bowl. Marian's shoulders slumped, as if something heavy had settled into her spine. Her eyes rolled back, showing only pale. Elspeth gasped, hands flying to her mouth. Declan froze, Bible held up like a useless prop. Marian's mouth opened. The sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was a long exhale, a low, resonant note that seemed to come from the floorboards. It vibrated in my teeth. It made my skin crawl. The lamp flickered, once, twice, then it went out. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by the struggling candle flame. In that dim light, Marian's face looked wrong. The shadows under her cheekbones deepened. Her smile, because yes, she was smiling, looked too wide for her mouth. Her eyes snapped forward, pupils huge and black. And she spoke. "I am not alone," she said. Her voice layered over itself, like two people speaking at once, one a fraction of a second behind the other. Elspeth whimpered. Declan took an involuntary step back, heel bumping the coffee table. I stood rooted, Bible heavy in my hands, suddenly aware of how ridiculous we must look. Two people playing priest, holding props, in a house that felt like a throat. Marian's gaze moved between us with slow satisfaction. "You came with tricks," she said. "You brought saltless water. You brought oil that knows no blessing. You brought words you don't carry in your bones." Her head turned toward Elspeth again. "And you," she whispered. "You brought her grief like a ribbon. You wrapped it around her neck and called it love." Elspeth shook her head, tears spilling. I didn't. Marian's smile sharpened. "You left her," she said. "You left her here with the house, with the room, with the lock on the inside." I swallowed hard. "What room?" I heard myself ask, voice small. Marian's eyes slid to me again, delighted. "Oh," she said softly. She asks because she already knows." I didn't know, not truly, but something in the house did feel arranged, like furniture that had been moved for a purpose, like silence that had been practiced. Declan found his voice cracking. "We're done," he said. "We're leaving now." Marian's head tilted. "No," she said. The word was quiet, but it landed in the room like a stone. Then the front door slammed somewhere in the house. Not a gentle closing. A sharp, violent slam that made Elspeth cry out. Declan spun toward the hallway, heart racing. What the? Another slam, upstairs this time, a door banging shut. Then another. The house was closing itself. Elspeth grabbed my arm, fingers digging in. "Please," she whispered. "Please do something. Do something." The words families always said. The desperate plea that kept our business alive. I looked at Declan. He looked back, and for once there was no swagger, no script. His mouth was slightly open, his throat working. Marian chuckled, the sound echoing oddly. "Now," she said, "you can be honest." The candle flame guttered and flared, throwing light across the walls. In that brief flare, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Faint marks on the wallpaper near the skirting boards. Scratches. Thin, shallow lines, as if someone had dragged something sharp across the paper again and again. And then I heard it. A soft scraping sound. Not from the voicemail memory. Not imagined. From inside the walls. It moved slowly, like something crawling through the plaster. Elspeth clamped her hands over her ears. "No," she sobbed. "No, no, no." Declan backed toward the doorway, reaching behind him for the handle that wasn't there anymore, because the door, somewhere in the hall, was now shut. He yanked at the sitting room door. It didn't budge. Marian watched, eyes bright with amusement. "The house likes company," she said. The scraping grew louder. It traveled along the wall behind Marian's chair, then stopped directly behind her. A bulge appeared in the wallpaper, subtle at first, like damp swelling. Then it pushed outward, slow and deliberate, as if something pressed from the other side with a palm. The wallpaper stretched, the pattern warping. Elspeth screamed. Declan staggered back, nearly tripping over the chair. The bulge moved upward, dragging a ridge behind it, and I saw the faint outline of fingers, too long. Joints wrong, pressing from inside the wall. Marian's smile widened. "Hello," she whispered, not to us, but to the wall. The wallpaper tore with a wet sound. A hand emerged. It was not a hand in any human sense. It was pale and gray, skin thin like boiled parchment, fingers elongated and ending in nails that looked like dark, cracked horn. The hand flexed, slow, testing the air, as if smelling with touch. I couldn't breathe. My mind tried to label it prank, prosthetic, hallucination, but my body didn't care. My body knew predator when it saw one. The hand withdrew slightly, then pushed again, tearing the wallpaper wider. Something moved behind it, a shape, a suggestion of a head too close to the surface. Marian began to hum. It was a tune I didn't recognize, but it made my stomach twist, like hearing a lullaby sung wrong. Declan found his voice again, frantic. "Stop," he shouted. "Stop that. In Jesus' name, stop." Marion turned her head toward him slowly, eyes gleaming. "You keep saying names," she said softly, "but you don't mean them." Then she did something that made the room tilt, as if gravity blinked. She stood, not with effort, not with normal movement. She rose in one smooth motion, as if lifted by an invisible hook in her spine. Her feet didn't seem to fully press into the carpet. It was subtle, but it was enough to make my stomach drop. Elspeth sobbed, backing into the corner. Declan lunged toward the window, yanking at the curtains, desperate for light. The fabric resisted, as if stuck. He tore it, ripping it free. Gray daylight spilled in, weak and foggy. For a moment, the room looked less like a stage. For a moment, I thought maybe. Then I saw Marion's face in that natural light. Her skin was stretched tight, as if pulled from the inside. The veins at her temples stood out dark. Her eyes were too wide, and her pupils, God, her pupils were not round. They were narrow, like a cat, but vertical and too sharp. She smiled at the light like it was a joke. "You think it hurts," she said. "It doesn't." The scraping in the wall grew faster, more excited, like something eager. Declan backed away, hands shaking, Bible trembling. "We didn't mean," he began, and stopped, as if the words tasted like ash. Marion stepped toward him. Each footfall made no sound. "Didn't mean," she echoed. "No one ever means. They just do." She leaned close to Declan's face, close enough that he recoiled from her breath. I expected rot, sulfur, something cinematic. But the smell was worse because it was almost nothing. Just cold air, like opening a freezer and inhaling emptiness. Marion's voice softened. "Tell me," she whispered to Declan, "how many did you pretend to save?" Declan's lips moved, but no sound came out. Marion's smile deepened. "Do you know what you did?" she asked. "You practiced opening doors." Elspeth cried, "Please stop. Please, Marion, stop." Marion's head snapped toward Elspeth, so quickly it made my neck ache in sympathy. "She wants you back," Marion said, voice sharp now. "Do you want to go back?" Elspeth shook violently. "Yes, yes, please." Marion's smile softened in a way that felt like mockery of kindness. "All right," she said, "then come closer." Elspeth hesitated, torn between fear and hope. "Marion," she whispered, taking a step. I grabbed her arm without thinking. "Don't," I said, my voice rough. "Elspeth, don't go near her." Marion's eyes slid to my hand. "Oh," she said softly, "she touches. She tries to protect. How noble." The words dripped sarcasm. "Let her go," Marion said, voice low. "I didn't." The candle flame flared suddenly, bright enough to make me squint. Then it went out, not flicker out, snuffed, as if a giant thumb pressed down on it. Darkness swallowed the room again, thicker now that the window light was blocked by fog. In that darkness, something moved behind us. A soft, wet scrape. I turned, heart hammering. The torn wallpaper behind Marian's chair gaped like a mouth. The hand that had emerged was gone, but the hole remained, edges ragged. Then from inside the hole, an eye opened. Not a human eye. Too large, too glossy. It reflected the faint window light like oil. It blinked slowly, and it looked at me. My body went cold all at once. Every hair on my arms rose. Elspeth made a strangled sound and sagged against me. Declan whispered, what is that?" Marian chuckled in the darkness. "That," she said, "is the house's hunger." The eye in the wall shifted, tracking us. Then it vanished, retreating into the plaster, as if it had never been there. The scraping moved again, traveling along the wall toward the hallway. Something was in the house. Something that was not just in Marian. Declan suddenly bolted for the sitting room door again, slamming his shoulder into it. It shuddered, still locked. He slammed again, grunting, panic rising. Marian spoke, her voice almost sing-song. "You can't leave," she said. "Not until we're finished." Declan turned on her, face twisted. "We didn't sign up for this," he shouted, absurd in the circumstances, as if a demon cared about contracts. Marian tilted her head. "No," she agreed. "You signed others up. You took their fear and made it into money. You made sacred things into costumes." She took a step closer to him, and the air seemed to vibrate. "Now," she whispered, "you get to be the story." Elspeth sobbed quietly. I felt her shaking through my grip, and something inside me, something stubborn, something tired, finally cracked. Not fear, not entirely. Anger, not at Marian, not even at whatever wore her. Anger at Declan, at me, at the way we treated people's pain like a marketplace. I heard myself speak before I could stop it. "What do you want?" I asked, voice shaking but loud in the dark. Marian turned toward me, slow and delighted. "Oh," she said, "she asks the right question." The house was quiet now. Even the scraping paused, as if listening. Marian stepped closer to me, and I fought the urge to back away. Her eyes were black pools in the dim. "I want," she whispered, "to be seen." The words landed with the weight of truth, and for a horrifying second, I understood. Not with sympathy, with recognition. The craving to be acknowledged. The rage of being ignored. "You were seen," I said, my mouth dry. "You're whatever you are, you're here. We see you." Marian's smile widened. "No," she murmured, "not like that. Not as a ghost story. Not as a performance." Her gaze flicked to Declan. "I want your honesty," she said. "Your real fear. Your real faith, if you have any left. I want the part of you that still believes in something bigger than your own mouth." Declan's face was pale. "I don't," he began. Marian's head snapped toward him. "Liar," she hissed. And suddenly Declan's body jerked, like a puppet yanked by strings. He staggered backward, arms flailing, and slammed against the wall. He tried to push off it, but his palms stuck, not like glue. Like the wall had become soft, like wet clay, and his hands sank slightly into it. Declan screamed. The wallpaper around his fingers puckered and rippled, as if swallowing him by degrees. Elspeth wailed. I lunged forward instinctively, grabbing Declan's wrist and pulling. His skin was cold, too cold, like he'd been outside in snow. I pulled harder, muscles straining. The wall resisted like suction. Declan's eyes rolled wildly. Get me out, he screamed, voice breaking. Get me out. Marion watched, almost serene. You wanted to touch what was behind people's eyes, she said. Here, touch. The wall around Declan's hands moved, subtle waves beneath the wallpaper. I felt it under my own palm as I grabbed him, something shifting beneath the surface, like muscle. I almost vomited. I yanked. Declan's hand came free with a wet sound, as if peeling from something alive. His skin was smeared with gray residue, plaster, maybe, but it looked like ash. He stumbled forward, clutching his hand, panting. Marion's voice softened again, almost conversational. Do you pray? She asked me. I swallowed, throat aching. I used to. Marion leaned in. Pray now, she whispered. The room felt suddenly tighter, like the walls had moved in by inches. My mind scrambled for words. Not Latin, not scripts, something real. I closed my eyes, because looking at her was like staring into a well. And I prayed, not eloquently, not beautifully. I didn't recite a polished passage. I said in a whisper that shook, God, if you're there, please, help her, help us, please. The silence that followed was enormous. Then Marion laughed, a sharp, delighted sound. Oh, she said, there it is, small, ugly, honest. The house creaked, a deep groan as if shifting its weight. The scraping in the walls resumed, faster now, circling. Marion's expression changed. For the first time, something like irritation flickered across her face. You're calling, she said, voice suddenly harsh. You're calling, and you don't even know who answers. I opened my eyes. Marion's pupils had narrowed further, almost slits. Her skin looked tighter, as if something inside her was pressing outward. Elspeth whispered, Marion. Marion's head twitched, just slightly. For a heartbeat, her face flickered like a screen glitching, and I saw the Marion beneath, frightened, exhausted, eyes wet. Then it snapped back. Marion's mouth curled. Not yet, she hissed. She doesn't get to come up yet. Declan, shaking, backed toward the window, eyes wide, breath coming in ragged bursts. This is insane, he whispered. This is. The words failed him. The house answered with a sound like a sigh. And then the scratching stopped. Not faded, stopped. Silence fell again. Marion's head tilted, listening. Her smile returned, slow and satisfied. They're here, she whispered. I felt my blood run cold. Who? Marion's eyes lifted toward the ceiling again, toward the upper floors. The others, she said softly. The ones who learned to live in the walls. A thud sounded upstairs. heavy, slow, like something stepping. Elspeth made a small, terrified noise. No, no, that's not, there's no one. Another thud, closer to the stairwell. Then another. The sound was not like a person walking. It was too deliberate, too heavy, like a body being moved without joints. Declan shook his head repeatedly, as if trying to dislodge the sound. We need to go, he whispered. We need to get out right now. Marion smiled wider. Where would you go? She asked. The fog outside is thick, the road is long, and the house. She inhaled, slow, savoring. The house has been lonely. The sitting room door creaked. Not opening, just creaking, as if something leaned against it from the other side. Then came the sound of breathing. Not human, too slow, too wet. Elspeth began to sob again, quietly, like her body couldn't afford loud noise. I backed instinctively, pulling her with me, until my shoulders hit the wall near the mantel. The turned photo frames sat there, like blind eyes. Declan clutched his Bible so hard, his knuckles were white. The door creaked again, then a soft knock. 3 taps. Polite. Marion chuckled. Come in, she said. The sitting room door swung inward. Slowly, the hallway beyond was dark, and something stood there. At first, my mind refused to shape it. It was too tall, too thin, outlined only by faint foglight leaking from somewhere behind. But as it leaned forward, the weak light caught details. A long neck, a head tilted at an odd angle, and a face that looked unfinished. Like someone had tried to sculpt a person out of wax and stopped halfway. Its skin was the color of old paper. Its mouth was a narrow slit that widened slightly as it inhaled. Its eyes, if they were eyes, were simply 2 dark hollows that drank light. It didn't step into the room. It just stood in the doorway, breathing, as if waiting for permission. Marion's voice softened, almost affectionate. Hello, she whispered. The thing in the doorway tilted its head further, impossibly. Declan made a choked sound. Elspeth fainted. Her body sagged, limp, and I caught her, lowering her to the floor with shaking hands, never taking my eyes off the doorway. The thing's head turned toward me. I felt its attention like pressure against my skin. Marion watched me watching it, smiling like she arranged this. You wanted horror, she said softly, as if reading my mind. Here, now you can stop pretending. I swallowed, forcing my voice to work. What is that? Marion's smile widened. A memory, she said, a hunger, a prayer that went bad. The thing in the doorway took a step forward. The floorboards groaned under its weight. Its limbs were too long, elbows bending wrong, hands hanging low near its knees. It moved like a marionette pulled by a patient hand. Declan backed into the window, panting. Stop, he whispered. Stop, stop. The thing took another step. The air smelled stronger now, sweet rot and cold stone. Marion's voice became a murmur, almost lullaby-like. This house was built with certain stones, she said, from the cliff, from the old churchyard. Someone wanted it to be strong. Someone wanted it to last. She smiled, eyes gleaming. Sometimes, she continued, when you build with bones, you get echoes. The thing in the doorway moved again. This time, it crossed the threshold fully, and the light in the room seemed to dim around it, as if it absorbed brightness. Declan finally snapped. He threw the Bible. It hit the thing's chest and fell to the floor with a dull thump. The thing didn't react. Declan screamed and lunged for the window latch, clawing at it. The latch wouldn't move. He yanked again, frantic, nails scraping wood. The thing turned its head toward him, and then it moved fast, so fast my eyes barely tracked it. One moment, it was near the doorway. The next, it was beside Declan, its long arm extended, its hand wrapped around Declan's throat. Declan's scream cut off into a strangled gasp. His feet scrabbled on the floor, kicking, trying to find leverage. The thing lifted him slightly, not fully off the ground, but enough that his toes barely touched. Declan's face turned red, then purple. His hands clawed at the thing's arm, fingers sliding as if the skin was slick. I stood frozen, every instinct screaming to run, but there was nowhere to run. Marian watched, expression serene, as if observing a lesson. You see, she whispered, no theater, no script, just consequence. Declan's eyes bulged, panic wild. He looked at me, pleading. I stumbled forward, grabbing his wrist, trying to pull him free. The thing's grip was like iron. Its skin felt cold and slightly damp, like stone that sweats. I pulled harder. It didn't budge. Marian sighed, almost bored. Ask, she said softly. What? I choked. Ask properly, Marian replied. Not with your hands, with your mouth, with your heart. Declan's face was darkening. His lips trembled. I looked at Marian, then at the thing. My voice came out cracked. Please, I said, and hated myself for how small it sounded. Please let him go. Marian's eyes narrowed slightly. Not him, she whispered. It's not listening to you for him. It's listening for you. My stomach dropped. What do you want? I asked again, louder now, desperate. Marian smiled. I want you to admit it, she said. I want you to say the truth out loud. I swallowed, mouth dry. We were fake, I said, voice shaking. We weren't real. We took money, we lied, The words tasted like blood. Marian's smile widened, delighted. Yes, she whispered. Say it like it matters. We lied, I repeated, louder, voice breaking. We lied to people who were scared. We used their fear. We made it into a show. As I spoke, the air in the room seemed to shift, like something listening deeply. The thing's grip on Declan loosened, just slightly. Declan sucked in a ragged breath. Marian's eyes gleamed. Again, she murmured. I felt tears sting my eyes, not from emotion exactly, but from the pressure of the moment. We're not holy, I said, voice shaking. We're thieves. The thing released Declan abruptly. Declan collapsed to the floor, coughing, retching, hands on his throat. The thing turned its hollow gaze toward me. Marion stepped closer, voice low and intimate. "Good," she whispered. "Now you're clean enough to speak." My knees felt weak. Elspeth lay unconscious at my feet, her face pale. Declan gasped on the floor, eyes watering, chest heaving. The thing stood between us and the doorway, silent. Marion's voice softened. "This house," she said, "has a room you haven't seen." My stomach twisted. "What room?" Marion's smile returned, slow and cruel. "The room where Marion learned how to open," she whispered. She turned and began to walk toward the hallway. The thing stepped aside, making space, like a doorman. Marion's gaze flicked back to me. "Come," she said. "You wanted to help. My body screamed no. But my mind, my terrible, curious mind, knew Elspeth wouldn't survive a night here without someone doing something. And Declan was too broken to lead anything. So I lifted Elspeth's limp body with effort, dragging her slightly across the carpet, and followed Marion into the hallway. The house was darker out here. The air was colder. The wallpaper looked more damaged, strips hanging like dead skin. The scratching marks along the skirting boards were more numerous, as if something had paced here for years. Marion moved toward the staircase. Declan stumbled after us, coughing, one hand clutching his throat. He looked at me with raw terror. "Don't," he rasped. "Don't go up there." Marion paused at the base of the stairs and looked back, amused. "Up," she said. "Down. It's all the same inside a throat." The stairs groaned as she began to ascend. I took a step. The wood creaked beneath my weight, the sound loud in the silence. Halfway up, the air changed. It smelled stronger of that sweet rot, like something decaying behind sugar. My breath came out thin and white again. The walls felt closer. At the landing, a corridor stretched left and right, doors lining it like closed mouths. The foglight from outside barely reached here. Shadows pooled in corners. Marion stopped before one door. The wood was darker than the others, stained as if by old water. The handle was tarnished, and around the frame, carved into the plaster, were marks, symbols, not random scratches. Shapes that looked like eyes and hooks and looping lines. My stomach churned. Declan whispered, hoarse, "No, no, no, no." Marion placed her hand on the handle. For a heartbeat, she looked almost like herself, again tired, fragile. Then the smile returned. "This is where she prayed," Marion whispered. "This is where she begged. This is where she learned that begging is just another kind of invitation." She turned the handle. The door opened. The room beyond was small and bare. A single window looked out onto fog and trees. The walls were covered not with wallpaper, but with writing. Words scratched into plaster. Not neat, not intentional. Frenzied spirals of sentences, overlapping, repeated until the meaning dissolved into shape. I stepped closer, heart hammering. The phrases jumped out in places where the scratches were deeper, darker. Please stop. I didn't mean to. Who are you? Go away. I'm sorry. Then lower on the wall, carved with a steadier hand. I opened the door. At the center of the room sat a chair, and around it, the floorboards were stained dark, like something had been spilled and dried long ago. A cheap handheld recorder lay on the floor beside the chair, old-fashioned, the kind journalists use. Its red light blinked faintly. Declan made a small sound. What is that? Marion stepped into the room, and the temperature dropped further. That, she said softly, is her voice. The recorder's red light blinked again, and then, without anyone touching it, it clicked. A hiss of tape, then a woman's voice, Marion's real voice, weak and shaking, filled the room. If anyone finds this, the recorded Marion whispered, please, please don't stay here. Don't. Her voice broke into a sob. I thought it was Dad, the recording continued. I thought I heard him in the walls. I thought it was grief. I talked back. I listened. And then it talked to me like it knew me, like it had always been waiting. A pause, filled with quiet crying. I tried to stop, Marion's recorded voice said. I tried to pray. But every prayer felt like it bounced back, like the house swallowed it. Another pause. Then, very softly, I opened the door. The tape hissed. Elspeth stirred faintly in my arms, making a small moan. Declan stared at the recorder like it was a snake. Marion, the one standing in the room, smiled, pleased. She did, she said softly. And once a door is open, it's rude to slam it shut. I swallowed hard. My voice trembled. Why show us this? Marion's eyes slid to me. Because you wanted proof, she whispered. Because you built your life on pretending there was something behind the curtain. Her smile sharpened. Now you know. The recorder clicked again, as if reaching the end. Silence fell. Then, from somewhere inside the walls, a soft scratching began. It was louder here, close, as if something pressed its nails against the plaster inches from my face. Elspeth whimpered in my arms, half conscious. Declan backed away from the doorway, shaking. We need to leave, he rasped. We need to. Marion stepped closer to me, voice low. You can leave, she whispered, but you'll take it with you. My stomach dropped. What? Marion smiled wider. You opened doors too, she said. Not like she did. Not with prayers, with lies, with invitations to fear. With every person you told, yes, it's a demon, you made the world softer, easier to slip through. My hands shook. We didn't. Marion's expression hardened. Do you think intention matters? She hissed. Do you think the fire cares if you meant to drop the match? The scratching in the wall sped up, frantic. Then the plaster beside the window bulged outward again, as it had downstairs. A ridge moved beneath it, like something crawling. Elspeth screamed, suddenly awake, her eyes snapping open in terror. What is, she gasped, seeing the room, the writing, Marion's face. Marian turned toward her, smile sweet. Elspeth, she said softly, you wanted her back. Elspeth sobbed, shaking. Yes, please, please, Marian. Marian took a step closer to Elspeth, voice gentle. Then take her, she whispered. Elspeth reached out instinctively. I tried to pull her hand back, but she was frantic, desperate, grabbing at Marian's sleeve. The moment Elspeth touched her, Marian's body jerked. Her mouth opened, and a sound came out that was half sob, half laugh. And then, for a heartbeat, Marian's eyes cleared. Her pupils widened, round and human. She looked at Elspeth. Elle, she whispered, voice small. Elsie. Elspeth cried out, joy and terror mixing. Marian, Marian, I'm here, I'm here. Marian's face twisted, agony rippling across it like a wave. Run, Marian whispered, suddenly urgent. Run, don't. Her voice cut off as the wrong voice surged back in. Harsher now, furious. No, it roared through her mouth. The room shook, not metaphorically, physically. The floorboards trembled, the window rattled. The bulge in the plaster burst open. A long hand shot through, nails scraping, tearing. Then another. The wall split wider, plaster cracking. Something pushed through, forcing itself out like a birth. A head emerged, long, hairless, mouth too wide, eyes like dark pits. Elspeth screamed. Declan bolted down the corridor, stumbling, sobbing, losing all pretense. I grabbed Elspeth and yanked her back toward the hallway, dragging her. Both of us scrambling over our own feet. Behind us, the thing in the wall pulled itself farther into the room, joints bending wrong. Marian laughed, high and delighted over the chaos. Yes, she cried. Yes, come out, come out, come out. We slammed into the corridor, nearly falling. The house's air felt thicker, charged. Downstairs, we had to get downstairs, out somehow. But as we ran toward the stairs, the hallway ahead seemed to stretch. The doors on either side looked farther away than they should. The landing felt longer, warped, like the house was rearranging itself. Declan shouted from ahead, voice cracking. This way, this way. He slammed into a door, yanking it open. It led into a bedroom, dust, and old furniture. Not the stairs. He backed out, panic wild. Where's the stairs? I stopped, chest heaving, staring. The corridor behind us, the one we'd just come from, no longer looked the same. The door to the writing room was gone. In its place was a blank wall, wallpaper intact, as if it had never existed. Elspeth sobbed hysterically. It's changing, she cried. It's changing, oh God. A sound echoed behind us. Slow, heavy. A step, then another. Something moving in the corridor, coming toward us. And above it, Marian's voice, singing now, that wrong lullaby tune. Declan grabbed my sleeve, eyes frantic. We're going to die here, he whispered. I shook my head, forcing breath into my lungs. No, I said, and didn't know if I meant it. No, we can't. My gaze fell on one of the doors, slightly ajar, darkness beyond. From inside came a faint draft of colder air, like a path. I didn't have time to think. I shoved Elspeth toward it. "In there," I said. She stumbled inside, sobbing. I grabbed Declan's arm and pulled him with me. The room was small, like a storage closet. Shelves lined the walls, empty except for old jars and a folded sheet. It smelled of dust and mouse droppings, but at the back of the closet, behind a hanging coat, was something that didn't belong. A narrow staircase descending into darkness. My mouth went dry. Declan stared. "No," he whispered. "No, no." Another heavy step sounded outside the closet door. A soft, sniffing sound, like something smelling for us. I didn't see another choice. Down I hissed. We plunged into the staircase, Elspeth first, then me, then Declan. The steps were steep, narrow, damp. The walls closed in, stone cold against my shoulders. The air grew colder with every step. Above us, the closet door creaked. Something began to descend after us. A faint scraping against stone. Elspeth sobbed, her breath coming fast. "Where are we going? Where?" "Keep moving," I whispered, voice shaking. The staircase ended abruptly in a basement corridor. The ceiling was low. Pipes ran along the walls, dripping. The floor was packed earth in places, slick stone in others, and ahead, faintly, was light. Not electric, not warm. A pale gray glow seeping from under a door. Declan grabbed my arm hard. "Don't," he hissed. "Don't open another door." The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been killing us. The scraping behind us grew louder. The thing was closer now. I could hear its breath, wet and slow. Elspeth looked at me with wild eyes. "Please," she whispered. "Please." I reached for the door. My hand shook. I pulled it open. The room beyond was larger than the corridor suggested. A cellar, maybe, with stone walls and a dirt floor. The gray light came from dozens of candles arranged in a circle, their flames strangely steady despite the draft. In the center of the circle sat a wooden hatch in the floor, like a trapdoor, and around the circle, carved into the stone, were those same symbols. Eyes, hooks, loops. This wasn't just an old basement. This was an altar. My stomach turned. Elspeth whispered, "Oh my God." Declan backed away, shaking his head. "No, no, this is. The scraping behind us reached the doorway. I didn't turn. I could feel it, like a presence pressing into my back. Marian's voice drifted down the stairs behind it, singing. And then she spoke, clearer now, echoing through the stone corridor. "You found the heart," she called. My blood ran cold. The thing behind us entered the cellar doorway, silhouetted against the corridor darkness. Its long limbs bent as it ducked under the low frame. It paused, as if reluctant to cross the candle circle. Marian's laughter echoed. "Even it is polite here," she said. Elspeth clutched my sleeve. "What is this place?" she whispered. My eyes fixed on the hatch. The trapdoor looked old, edges splintered. A thick iron ring lay flat against it, and from beneath it, I heard something, not scratching, not breathing, a whisper, too faint to make out words, but it had rhythm, like a prayer spoken by many mouths at once. Declan swallowed hard. "We're under the house," he whispered. This is where it started." Marian's voice came closer down the stairs, footsteps soft. "You're smart," she called, amused. "You finally see the stage." The thing in the doorway shifted, uneasy. The candle flames wavered, bowing toward the trapdoor as if pulled. Elspeth began to cry again, quietly. "What do we do?" she whispered. "Please, please." And in that moment, with the candles and the symbols and the whispering beneath the hatch, I realized something that made my skin go cold with dread. This wasn't a haunting that happened to Marian. This was something Marian was brought into. An inheritance, not a sickness. A door built into the house, and someone had used it before. I looked at the carved symbols, tracing them with my eyes. They weren't random, they were deliberate, ritual. This house wasn't cursed by accident. It was designed. Marian stepped into view at the top of the cellar stairs. Her face was pale in the candlelight, eyes bright. She descended slowly, hands at her sides, smiling like a host greeting guests. "You're here," she said, almost warmly. "Good. I hate eating alone." Declan choked on a sob. "What do you want?" he rasped, voice raw. Marian stopped just outside the candle circle. Her smile softened. "I want," she said, "to be finished." Elspeth shook her head, tears streaming. "Marian, please, please, if you're in there." Marian's eyes flickered again, a brief flash of pain. Then the wrong voice surged back, sharp. "She is in here," it hissed, like a doll in a box. Elspeth sobbed harder. I forced myself to speak, voice shaking. "If you want to be finished, what does that mean?" Marian's smile widened, pleased by my question. "It means," she said softly, "the hatch opens again." The whispers beneath the trapdoor grew louder, as if responding. Declan shook his head violently. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Marian's gaze slid to him. "You've opened many things," she murmured. "Today you close one. Isn't that fair?" The thing in the doorway shifted, leaning forward slightly, as if curious. Marian extended her hand toward the candle circle. The candle flames bowed toward her fingers. "Elspeth," Marian said, voice suddenly soft, almost human. "Come." Elspeth sobbed, frozen. Marian's expression hardened. "Come," the wrong voice roared. Elspeth flinched, as if struck. I stepped forward instinctively, putting myself between Elspeth and Marian, heart hammering. Marian's eyes fixed on me. "You," she whispered, delighted. "Yes, you're better." My throat went dry. "Better for what?" Marian's smile widened. "Better to hold the door," she said. The words hit me like ice water. I backed away, shaking my head. "No." Marian's voice softened, coaxing. "You prayed," she said. "You asked to help. This is help." The whispers beneath the hatch became clearer now. not words I understood, but the cadence of devotion twisted into something hungry. Declan backed toward the wall, hands raised. "This is insane," he rasped. "We're not." Marion snapped her gaze to him. "You're not," she agreed, cold. "You're empty." Then she did something that made my stomach flip. She stepped into the candle circle. The flames didn't resist her. They leaned toward her, eager, as if she belonged there. The thing in the doorway made a low sound, almost like a whine. It did not cross. Marion walked to the trapdoor and placed her palm on it. The whispers surged. Her eyes rolled back, and for a heartbeat, her mouth moved without sound, as if listening and replying to a conversation beneath the floor. Then her eyes snapped open, and she looked straight at me. "Open it," she whispered. Elspeth screamed, "No." Declan shouted, "Do." My body shook. Every instinct screamed to run. But the stairs behind us were blocked by that thing's presence, and the corridor felt like a throat swallowing air. I looked at Elspeth. Her face was streaked with tears, eyes pleading. I looked at Declan. His face was twisted with terror and guilt, and something else, helplessness. And I looked at Marion, standing over the hatch like a priest at an altar. Then I did the only thing I could think of. I told the truth. Not the truth about our scam. Not the truth about my mother. Something deeper. "I'm afraid," I said, voice shaking. "I'm afraid, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not holy. I'm not strong. I'm just here." The candle flames wavered. Marion's smile faltered, just slightly. I kept going, because I sensed, somehow, that honesty was the only thing in the room that wasn't already claimed. "I used people," I said, voice cracking. "I used their pain, and I hated myself for it. And I still did it, because it was easier than being broke, easier than being nothing." My throat tightened. Tears spilled before I could stop them. "I don't have the right words," I whispered. "But if there's anything good left in me, if there's anything good left in this world, please, don't let her be taken." For a heartbeat, the cellar was silent. Even the whispers beneath the hatch seemed to pause, as if listening. Marion's face twisted. Anger flashed. "You're making it messy," the wrong voice hissed. The candles flickered violently. The thing in the doorway jerked, as if pulled by a thread. The hatch rattled beneath Marion's palm. Elspeth sobbed, clutching herself. Declan whispered, "What are you doing?" I swallowed hard, voice shaking, but louder now. "I'm not opening it," I said. "I won't. Whatever you are, you can't make me." Marion laughed sharp. "Caw." The hatch rattled again, and then, slowly, the iron ring on the trapdoor lifted, not by any visible hand. It rose, as if tugged from beneath. My blood ran cold. Marion's eyes gleamed. "You see," she whispered, "the door opens anyway." The ring lifted higher. The trapdoor creaked. A thin seam of darkness appeared around its edges. And from that seam, the smell rose, sweet rot and cold emptiness, stronger than ever. Elspeth screamed. Declan stumbled back, sobbing. I stood frozen, staring at the widening seam. And then a voice rose from beneath the hatch. Not Marion. Not the wrong voice. Something deeper. A chorus layered, murmuring in a language that felt like it scraped against my brain. My vision blurred. My ears rang. The candles flared, their flames stretching tall, almost white. Marion threw her head back and laughed, a sound of pure triumph. Yes, she breathed. Yes, yes. The hatch jerked upward. A hand emerged, not gray like the wall hand. This hand was black, glossy, like something wet and burned. Its fingers were long, nails sharp, and it moved with hungry certainty. It gripped the edge of the trapdoor and pulled. The hatch opened wider. Darkness yawned beneath, thick as tar, and something shifted in that darkness, something vast, like a shape turning in deep water. Elspeth sobbed, Marion, Marion. For a heartbeat, Marion's laughter cut off. Her eyes widened. Her face, human for a flicker, showed fear. And she whispered, barely audible, I didn't think it would be this big. Then the wrong voice surged back in panic and rage, and she screamed, No, no. The darkness beneath the hatch surged upward like smoke. It coiled around Marion's legs. She screamed, this time a real scream. Marion's scream, raw and terrified. Elspeth lunged forward instinctively, reaching for her sister. Declan shouted, Do. I grabbed Elspeth around the waist, yanking her back, my heart pounding. The darkness climbed Marion's body, wrapping her like cloth. Her face contorted, eyes rolling. She reached out toward us, fingers clawing. Elspeth, she screamed, Marion's voice clear for the first time. Elsie, help. Then her mouth snapped shut. Her eyes went black. And when she spoke again, it wasn't two voices layered. It was many. We are home, the chorus said through her mouth. The candles bowed toward her like worshippers. The thing in the doorway made a sound of fear and backed away, retreating into the corridor shadows. Marion, no. The thing wearing her stood tall in the candle's circle, the darkness now clinging to her skin like oil. And she smiled, not Marion's smile, a smile that felt ancient, satisfied, starving. You wanted a real exorcism, it said softly. Now you have one. My whole body shook. Elspeth sobbed, broken in my arms. Declan fell to his knees, gasping prayers he didn't believe. And in that cellar, under that house, I understood with sick clarity. We hadn't come to cast anything out. We'd come to witness something being let in. The thing took a step toward the edge of the circle. The candle flames leaned after it, reluctant to let it go. It stopped at the circle's boundary, tilting Marion's head. There are rules, it murmured, almost thoughtful. Old rules, annoying rules. It looked at me. But rules bend, it whispered, when people break. Then it smiled again. And you, it said softly, you are already broken in the right places. My mouth went dry. Elspeth whispered, Please, please, God. Declan sobbed, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. The thing's smile widened. savoring the fear. "Sorry is a door," it murmured. And then, without warning, the candles went out. All at once, darkness slammed down like a lid. Elspeth screamed. Declan screamed. I shouted blindly, stumbling backward, arms flailing, trying to find the wall. In the dark, I heard movement, fast, fluid, impossible. A wet breath near my ear, and then a whisper, intimate and cold. "Tell them," it said. "Tell them you saw me." My body froze. My heart hammered. I couldn't see anything, but I felt it close, pressed near my face, like a presence leaning in. Then a soft sound, like a kiss against air, and the candles flared back to life. The cellar returned in shaky light. Elspeth lay on the floor, sobbing. Declan crawled backward, eyes wild. The hatch in the floor was closed again, the iron ring lying flat. The candle circle was intact. And Marion lay on the dirt floor inside the circle, limp, hair spread like a dark halo. Her skin was pale. Her eyes were closed. She looked empty. Elspeth crawled forward, sobbing, reaching toward her sister. But the moment her fingers brushed Marion's cheek, Marion's eyes snapped open. They were normal, round, human. Elspeth cried out, "Marion." Marion blinked slowly, confusion dawning. "Elsie," she whispered, voice weak. Why are you crying?" Elspeth collapsed over her, sobbing, clutching her tight. Declan sat against the wall, shaking uncontrollably, staring at the hatch like it might open again at any second. I stood frozen, breath coming in ragged bursts. Marion looked up at me over Elspeth's shoulder, and for a moment, her eyes held a terrible clarity. She whispered, so softly I almost missed it, "It's not gone." Then her gaze drifted, unfocused, and she sagged in Elspeth's arms. Above us, the house creaked, a long, slow groan, like a body settling after swallowing. We got out somehow. I don't remember every detail, only fragments, like torn film. The corridor upstairs finally led to the staircase when we needed it. The front door opened when Declan threw himself against it. The fog outside was thick, but the road was there. We half carried Marion to Elspeth's car, her body limp, her breath shallow. Elspeth drove with shaking hands, sobbing and talking to her sister the whole way, as if the sound of her voice could stitch Marion back together. Declan sat in the back seat, staring out the window, silent, his cassock crumpled, his hands trembling. I watched the house disappear behind fog and trees, and as it vanished, I thought I saw something in an upstairs window, a shape, tall and thin, watching us leave. But when I blinked, it was gone. Marion was taken to hospital. Doctors said exhaustion, severe psychological distress. They used words like dissociation and trauma. Elspeth nodded and agreed because she needed something she could hold in her hands. Declan disappeared from my life within a week. He didn't call. He didn't text. He shut down the website, deleted the email address, vanished like a man running from a fire he could still smell in his hair. I tried to do the same. I got a job at a warehouse. I moved flats. I stopped reading about demons and started reading about mortgages and meal prep. I tried to become someone ordinary, but some nights, when the wind hits my window just right, I hear scratching. Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft scrape, like a nail dragged lightly over wood. And when I'm half asleep, I sometimes hear a voice, quiet, intimate, whispering in a tone that makes my blood go cold. Tell them, because here's the part I haven't said yet. After we left the house, after Marion came back, after the hospital and the explanations, and the tired, grateful tears, Elspeth called me 2 weeks later. Her voice was tight, controlled. She's better, Elspeth said. Mostly. She laughs again. She eats. She sleeps. I felt relief flood my chest. That's good. Elspeth was silent for a moment. Then she said, very softly, she doesn't pray anymore. I swallowed. Maybe she just needs time. Elspeth's voice cracked. No, you don't understand. A pause. She said prayer is a door, Elspeth whispered. She said it with my mother's voice. My blood went cold. Elspeth inhaled shakily. And last night, she continued, I woke up and she was standing in my hallway, just standing there, smiling. And she said, Elspeth's voice dropped to a whisper, as if afraid the words could summon something. She said, tell her I saw her in the cellar. Tell her she did well. My throat closed. Elspeth, I whispered. She's in my house now, Elspeth said, voice breaking. And sometimes, when she thinks I'm not looking, her eyes, she choked on a sob. I don't know who to call, she whispered. I don't know if you can help. I don't even know if you're real. I couldn't answer, because I didn't know either. I still don't, and that's why I'm telling you this now, into a microphone, on a channel where people come for fear, like it's entertainment. Because maybe saying it out loud is another kind of door. Or maybe it's the only way to keep it from pressing against the inside of my skull forever. So if you're listening, and you've ever felt the comfort of calling something evil instead of calling it complicated, be careful. If you've ever invited darkness into your life because it made a better story, be careful. And if you ever hear scratching in the walls of an old house late at night, when grief has made you soft and lonely, don't answer, because some things don't need faith to enter. They only need you to listen. And now, I'm going to do what I should have done the first time. I'm going to end this story. Thank you for listening all the way through. If you want more narratives like this, long-form, slow-burn horror, with the kind of dread that sticks to your ribs, make sure you're subscribed. Leave a comment if you made it to the end, because I read them, and I like knowing you're still there on the other side of the dark. And if you're hearing this at night, if your house is quiet, if the walls are too still, maybe turn on a light. I'll see you in the next one. Good night.